So this is Samsung's Galaxy Tab S9, and I've been using it on and off for like the past 2 months since it came out back in August. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with the Tab S9 series. They took away a few things, but they also improved a handful of things which are actually pretty important when it comes to the overall user experience for the Tab S9. It is the entry model to the Tab S9 series, so it does start at a price of around $799. So it is flagship tier for sure. As far as the pricing, it's pretty expensive, and you could probably find it on sale maybe during the Black Friday deals for maybe around $699 or maybe even potentially $599. Or if you do trade-ins, you'll probably be able to get it for a lot cheaper, but it's still the entry to the Tab S9 series of tablets. So it's the base model, you could say. Starting off the hardware and design, it's actually pretty similar from afar to the Tab S8, as well as even like the Tab S7. It kind of looks somewhat similar. They've changed a few things, mainly that being the actual camera bump and camera section of the device itself. And other small other few things, but mainly the main finish still feels the same. I believe it's all an aluminum armor type of frame, both on the sides and on the back itself. This particular colorway is the beige colorway, so it does a pretty decent job of not showing too many fingerprints, but in my opinion it doesn't really matter because I always end up covering this with a case. And not to mention, it does feel pretty comfortable in the hand. I don't know exactly how much it weighs, but it feels really good in the hand in my opinion. Where the S Pen goes, there is two sections that you could potentially put it. So first one is going to be obviously the back strip here. It's got like a small, slight sort of like an indentation. It's less pronounced than it was in previous generations, but it is a magnet section that you can easily place your S Pen on there. So you can place it with the S Pen point itself, pointing at the camera, or vice versa, whichever way. It doesn't matter anymore, and it charges both ways as well. And the magnetic strip itself is overall pretty strong, holding the S Pen on there, but I would personally recommend a case to not only, of course, add protection to your tablet itself, but also protect that S Pen from being knocked off. Because if you put this in a backpack or on a flat surface, or if you're not careful and bump it some way, you might bump off that S Pen and it goes flying off. You can also put the S Pen over top. There's a little magnetic section near where the power button is and the volume rocker, so below that, I guess almost covering where the micro SD card slot goes, you are able to put your S Pen on there, and that's pretty convenient for when you're actually using the S Pen consistently and then you just need to take it on and off to quickly do something. Now if you do use a case, you have to consider what kind of case you get, because of course if you get a case that covers that section, then you won't be able to use it. And the Tab S9 has a single camera lens that sticks out on the back of the device, and you also have the flash that's built into the back of the device. And the whole device is IP68 water and dust resistant rated, which is brand new to the Tab S series of tablets, which is, I think, very convenient. The only reason you would care about having an IP rating to your tablet is if you use your tablet, say when you're washing the dishes or when you're in the restroom or in the bathroom, or if you want to use it while you're taking a bath. I've never done that and probably never will, but for me, it's when I'm either washing my hands or washing dishes. You're able to nicely and easily keep the tablet nearby and be able to continue watching whatever content you're watching while still continuing to do your day-to-day stuff without having to worry about accidentally splashing your tablet and damaging it and potentially ruining it. So that's a bonus, and I think a very good quality of life type of update and feature. It's not something that everyone's going to need and want, but it's definitely something that's super convenient. The Tab S9 also has dual firing speakers on both ends and sides of the device, so for me, speakers sound overall really good. They have a good amount of depth to them. They get really loud, so if you're just using it for watching videos and content, they're going to be great for that. So whether it be actual movies and YouTube videos or even music, it'll be more than fine, and you'll be satisfied with the quality of the speakers on this tablet. The Tab S9 does have the power button and the volume rocker on either the top side or on the right hand side, depending on if you're holding the device vertically or horizontally, whichever you prefer. It's a pretty clicky and tactile buttons. Last year, the Tab S8 had a built-in fingerprint sensor into the power button, but this year with the Tab S9, because they've updated the display, they also have been able to include a under-display fingerprint sensor. So talking about the actual usage of this fingerprint sensor, for the most part, it gets the job done in my opinion. I think it's pretty fast and pretty seamless and reliable to use. Even with a glass screen protector, I do have one installed on the Tab S9, and I have little to no issue with the fingerprint sensor. The only issue I have with it is just the fact that you're only able to set up 3 different fingers. I don't really understand why, because you could potentially have your thumb and then your pointer finger for each hand. But because I only do three, I tried to focus more on remembering to hold the tablet in its main horizontal form factor, which is with the S Pen and the camera towards the top versus the S Pen and the camera towards the bottom. Because if you hold it the other way, upside down per se, your left hand won't be able to have both fingers turned on. So that's just one small annoyance when it comes to the fingerprint sensor. But as far as the reliability of the fingerprint sensor, it works well for the most part. You also do have facial recognition with the camera on the front. It is an ultra wide camera, so it is able to detect your face at most angles for the most part. The only thing that kind of ruins the facial recognition or makes it not work is when you're in a low light situation. Sometimes if you're in very low light, it won't recognize your face at all. Or if you're at a very extreme angle, then yeah, it's not going to recognize you. And even with glasses, I have sometimes little to no issue with whether I have my glasses on or my glasses off. The tablet also has micro SD card support, so if you want to expand that storage to save files and photos and videos, you could potentially increase the storage with a micro SD card. At the bottom of the Tab S9, you also have a first-party pin connection setup, so you're able to connect a first-party keyboard, such as a keyboard case if you wanted to use that. I do have a few, but personally I don't really use them very often, mainly because this tablet, in my opinion, is quite a bit small for me to actually comfortably use one of the built-in keyboards, or keyboard cases I should say, just because they're a little too cramped for my liking. But talking about those cases, like I said, there's a couple Samsung branded ones that you have that come in with a built-in keyboard, and most of those cases don't protect the sides, so the protection is minimum and it focuses more on functionality and productivity per se, because you have that keyboard. You also have the ability to kind of hide that S Pen depending on the case to, once again, make sure you don't lose your S Pen as well. But the case I've been personally rocking is the Tab S9's Spigen case. It comes with a built-in kickstand, but I will say it's not as good as the Tab S8 series kickstand case that they had before. That kickstand stretched across the whole back of the case, so that made it very easy to prop up the device at pretty much any angle and don't have to worry about the tablet itself being too heavy on one side, or if you accidentally push it or hit it by accident, it falling down and falling back. Because you technically do have two different angles with this particular case. There's the one angle that's a little taller, so it's meant, I guess, and better used for when you're looking at your tablet pretty much kind of face on, or just you're a little bit higher up and you're elevated a little bit more to get that angle to see it straight down. Or there's the option where it's a little bit flatter, but not all the way flat, and still gives you like an angle where you could potentially use it to maybe draw and take notes. The only issue is that it doesn't have a good grip where the kickstand part is, so the case does slide around, or the whole tablet slides around if you're not in a section where it's like kind of like propped up somewhere. So not my favorite case when it comes to the kickstand, but as far as protection, it's able to protect the tablet pretty well. Now, as far as the display, it is a 11-inch 1440p 120Hz adaptive refresh rate with a peak brightness of around, I believe, 420 of max, and then up to a peak of around 750 when you're outdoors. So overall, the display quality is really good. You're going to be getting a high quality display here for not only just doing your everyday stuff, whether it be browsing the internet or just browsing social media potentially, but mainly media content. So watching videos on YouTube, watching movies and shows on Disney Plus, on Hulu, on Netflix. Everything's going to look pretty good overall on this display as far as the quality, and the refresh rate is an adaptive refresh rate. Beforehand, if I'm not mistaken, on like the previous Tab S8 Plus and S8 Ultra, those were fixed refresh rates, even though they were already an AMOLED display, so they were 120 Hz fixed. This one in particular, and I think the whole Tab S9 series now, is now an adaptive refresh rate that allows it to go down to 60 Hz and up to 120 Hz. Not as good as like their flagship phones, which goes down to like I think sometimes even 1 Hz, depending on what you're doing on your screen. But this still should help with battery life as well, with it being adaptive. And overall, the whole experience has been smooth overall with One UI, as well as when you're inside of content. There's some apps that don't seem to adapt the refresh rate, either gets stuck to 60 Hz or it gets lower. It feels choppy for some apps. But for the most part, the experience is overall pretty good as far as smooth and fluidity. The size is overall pretty decent, especially when you're watching 16:9 content or even movie size content. So most aspect ratios fit pretty nicely when it comes to this display. So when watching content, it does fit pretty well and takes advantage of the aspect ratio of the content to pretty much take up the whole display. But of course, it is an 11-inch display, so it's not the biggest option you have available out there. The display also gets a lot better than it was before with the Tab S8 series. Now, like I said, it's like a peak brightness of 750 nits, so if you're outdoors, you'll be able to see it a little bit more clearly, but it's definitely not as high or as bright as a flagship phone. And another bonus of the Tab S9 being an AMOLED display is the eye comfort shield. So before with the LCD display, the eye comfort shield wasn't the best in my opinion, because when you turned on eye comfort shield, it would easily or dramatically just reduce the amount of blue light, making the whole display look kind of orangey. And I just wasn't a fan of how that looked. And now with the AMOLED display, it's a little more subtle, so it's definitely not as drastic when you're turning on the eye comfort shield. And might as well talking about the performance. It does have the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 SoC, as well as either 8 gigabytes of RAM with 128 gigabytes of storage, or 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. And it is the latest UFS 4.0, as well as LPDDR5X of RAM. So basically what all that means is you're getting the latest flagship specs on the Tab S9. The whole Tab S9 series has pretty much the exact same specs, except for maybe you may vary in the amount of storage that you'll be able to get. So performance on the Tab S9 for me has been nothing but spectacular. Like I mentioned, there are maybe a few apps that the refresh rate doesn't feel as smooth as the rest of the UI experience or as other apps, but for the most part, I've had literally no issues with the performance here. Every year the performance gets better, which is great to see, but the important thing is as well is that the performance also stays consistent as well as efficient. Little issues with the device actually getting super warm. The only time I ever felt the Tab S9 feeling just a little bit warm is when you're taking notes down near the bottom section of the display. I guess where the connection pins are in that certain section, it does feel maybe a bit warm, but never to the point that it gets really hot. Playing games is also a breeze on this device. Again, performance is top notch. It's pretty much able to handle most games that I throw at it, and by most games I mean the games I personally been using, because there's definitely more intensive games available out there that I personally don't play, such as the YouTube favorite Genshin Impact. I always see that in all kinds of videos. But me personally, I play games like Clash Royale, Minecraft, as well as something like Rocket League, and even those like games where it's like a 4-player or a 2-player competition, because you have a pretty big display, a tablet-sized display, so playing with someone else, it's been nothing but a good and fun experience. But what it always comes down to again is that tablet size. Are you okay with the 11-inch tablet size, or the things that you're doing? If it's a game that requires you to use your hands and it doesn't allow you to use like an actual controller, then you're going to want to get the Tab S9, because it's really comfortable to hold in the hand and pretty easy to reach most controls, and I'd assume most games because of the smaller display. But if you're going to be playing games that do allow you to use an actual controller, you might benefit from getting like the Tab S9 Plus or even the Tab S9 Ultra with a much bigger screen that gives you a more immersive experience. But if your usage for the tablet itself is mostly just going to be handheld and maybe a little bit of propping up, then you'll be more than satisfied, in my opinion, with the Tab S9, because it's going to be the more better experience because of how much more comfortable it's going to feel. And talking about the software, you do have the latest One UI 5.1.1 is what it's currently at as the recording of this video, as well as Android 13. And the software experience is overall really good. If you've ever used any other Samsung device, like if you have a Samsung phone right now, it's going to be very similar to that experience, but on a bigger form factor. And One UI does a pretty decent job of kind of evolving and expanding and being pretty good and adapting to a larger display. So they do small things such as when you're on your lock screen and you're trying to unlock your display, you have the same customization options as you would on a phone, but you also have the ability when you're actually inputting your PIN or your passcode or your password, you have the ability to move that passcode section from left to right to make sure that it's at a position for where your thumb is at and makes it more comfortable. And with it being a larger display, your home screen does adapt better to those larger displays to be able to allow you to add more icons and more widgets, basically make your app grid a lot larger. But again, same thing as the phones, you have the ability to stack your widgets, you can create folders, you can move apps and widgets wherever you please. And the quick sense notifications work the same as they would on a phone. You have your notifications, your quick toggles, which you can easily turn off and on, and your brightness slider if you have it set up so that it's easily accessible from the first swipe. It's very convenient. But one thing I do like about these quick settings and just notification section is when you do your swipe, depending on where you swipe down on the display, if you're holding it horizontally, the whole quick sense notifications panel will come down from where you swipe. So if you swipe down from the left, it'll be on the left-hand side. Swipe down from the middle, it'll be towards the middle. On the right, it'll be on the right-hand side. So it just makes it, again, very easy to use with one hand. The app drawer is, again, the exact same as it would be on a phone. You have the ability to customize your app drawer with moving apps on any particular page that you want, as well as create folders within your app drawer. Since it is a tablet, you do have a couple of different software features that you could utilize to really take advantage of different productivity options. So number one being the multitasking on the tablet mode, which basically allows you to use the taskbar as well as the edge bar. Both of those can be used to drag and drop apps when you're already in a different app that allows you to multitask, whether it be splitting the screen with two different apps side to side or using up to three. So you could have, like, the most I ever done is put a video up in a corner, maybe the calculator down at the bottom, and then a web page on the other side. So that's the most I've ever used it for. But again, with this size display, it's kind of a bit more cramped than it is on a bigger display, but you can still use it and take advantage of it as you would like. You also have the ability to change the whole UI experience to something called Samsung DeX. It's basically its own little Chrome slash Windows-like experience where the UI kind of turns into like a laptop look. It just means that the quick settings are now at the bottom. The apps that you were using still looks like the taskbar, but it feels more like Windows, more like a MacBook. And then you can easily snap your windows again, like if it was Windows, and just put two apps side by side into a split screen view. It's great. I think you can still get the job done with this particular size display. But me personally, I still find it a little bit too cramped to do that on this size of the display. And just in general, I feel like if I'm gonna do something that requires a laptop, I'm just gonna use a laptop. Personally, the reason I don't really use Samsung DeX is because even though it gives you that UI experience of a Windows slash Chrome laptop, it doesn't really turn the tablet into a laptop because you're still only able to use either web-based applications, so anything from the internet, or anything from the App Store. You can't download anything directly from Chrome and download it and install it. It has to be from the App Store. So that's the only reason why I really don't use Samsung DeX, because even though, yes, it gives you a pretty decent UI experience, I just wouldn't really benefit from it, from what I already do on the regular tablet mode. And the other productivity tool that comes in the box, free of charge, I mean, it might be included in the price already, is the Tab S9 S Pen. And similar to the Tab S9 already being IP68 water and dust resistant rated, so is the S Pen. It's also resistant to water, so if you drop this in, I don't know, the bathroom, if you're using your tablet in the bathroom and it falls, then no worries because this is water resistant. But on top of that, it's still an overall very good S Pen, or just a pen in general. And I always vouch for this Tab S9 and S Pen combo, or just Tab S series of combos, because these are so good for replacing a whole backpack, honestly. Like if you're a student, whether it be in high school or in college, or even an at-home student. I was an at-home student myself when I went to community college, and I used my Tab S7 series and then I upgraded to the Tab S8, but I loved using the Tab S for my notes, for reading the textbook, because I could easily highlight the textbook. I didn't have to buy a physical textbook. It just replaced everything for me. My folders, my papers, my exams. I did everything on my tablet. And Samsung Notes is a great notes app. If you've never used it, it's basically a notes app that allows you to take notes handheld or even typed out notes. But the best experience is definitely with your S Pen and taking handheld notes. You can use different colors, write to text, or create specific shapes. And you can also install different PDF files to get a particular type of template to use for all your notes. It's very customizable and very cool. And you can also then export those notes. So if you have to either turn them in as, I don't know, homework or an exam, turn it in via a Dropbox or something via online. I vouch for Samsung Notes. I vouch for the S Pen overall. But the only downside is if you use multiple different types of products, if you're not just Samsung or Android in general, even just Android in general actually, if you're not just Samsung, if you're a Google user, a OnePlus user, even definitely an Apple user, you won't be able to access your notes anywhere else besides your tablet. So if you have like a Google Pixel phone and a Samsung tablet, all your notes will only be on your tablet, because Samsung Notes is only available on Samsung devices such as phones and tablets. But other than that, the X Pen experience is overall really good. The S Pen itself is super comfortable to hold in my opinion. It does maybe feel a little bit weird with that flat side with the magnet portion of it, but it overall I think feels really comfortable, and the responsiveness is really good. I forget what they're down to as far as the responsive time, but it's down really low, and you barely notice a difference. At least for me, I think it's overall really responsive. You also have the ability to use air gestures with the S Pen. Because it is a Bluetooth S Pen, you can do things such as if you're watching videos, you can skip to the next video, pause the video, and if you're using potentially the camera, you can use it as a shutter button, so you can prop your tablet somewhere and then just use your button on your S Pen to take a photo. But besides that, I honestly don't really use gestures very much. If anything, I kind of tend to turn them off because when I'm writing, I may accidentally click the button while I'm writing because I'm putting pressure on the S Pen, and I may trigger an accidental gesture and it causes me to be annoyed. So that's the only thing with them. They can be annoying if you're accidentally triggering them, but besides that, I don't really use them. And again, the size of the display will come into play whether or not this is comfortable or big enough for you to take notes on. Personally, I can comfortably take notes on this size of the display, especially if you're someone who's going to be on the go a lot. So if you're taking notes handheld, or if you're taking this to class and traveling back and forth with it, it's going to be easier to carry this around, and you'll still get a big enough display to be able to take notes. And lastly, with software, I do want to touch on just the ecosystem capabilities that it has. It is a Samsung tablet and it's also Android, so it does have some advantages here and there. So number one with Google will be just the ability to use the Google Find My to find the tablet itself. You can also connect your Google Messages if you wanted to. You can also do that with Samsung as well, so there's two options there. If you connect it via Samsung, it will link via your Samsung account, which then means if you have a Samsung phone that has service, and if you receive phone calls and text messages, you can then receive those same phone calls and messages on your Samsung tablet. Both Google and Samsung also have their own Quick Share and Nearby Share, which allows you to transfer files and photos wirelessly between different devices. Both of them work on both the Samsung tablet and with other Samsung devices, or again, Samsung tablet with Nearby Share with a different non-Samsung device. Samsung also has their own auto switch for Galaxy Buds, so if you're using a phone and a tablet, wants to listen to music, and then you decide to watch a video instead, it'll easily transition from your phone to the tablet's audio so that you are just having a seamless experience. You can also kind of copy and paste certain things from the Samsung tablet to another Samsung device, that being like links or even photos and images. If you copy something on one device, you can paste it on another device, which is pretty convenient. You can also use something called second screen, which basically allows you to use your tablet as a monitor. So if you have a Windows computer or a Windows laptop, you use this option via Windows, you turn on second screen on your tablet, and it'll detect the tablet as a monitor on your Windows device, and you select it, and it basically becomes a secondary monitor or a third monitor, however you have your setup, to easily then be able to use it with your computer or laptop. This can be convenient for someone who doesn't want to travel with a monitor, I guess, or if you're traveling and you have your laptop and you have the tablet, this can easily become a secondary screen for you. And Samsung is promising 4 years of major OS updates and 5 years of security updates, so you're good at least till 2027 or 2028 before you even have to consider getting a new tablet because of the software features. As far as the cameras, you do have a 13 megapixel wide on the back as well as a 12 megapixel on the front. Both of them are mediocre. They're tablet cameras. I personally never, if ever, use them, even for video calls. I don't really use my tablet for video calls, so I don't really get much use of these cameras, but there's a couple samples that you're seeing on the screen. You can decide on your own whether you like them or not. But I will mention that last year with the Tab S8, there was an ultra wide included. Granted, it was a pretty bad ultra wide, it wasn't that great, but now there's only a single wide camera. So they removed the camera from last year's base model. Whether you care about that or not is totally up to you. The front one is an ultra wide, which is good, so you are able to take ultra wide selfies or be able to use it for video calls as well. And the cool thing with the front camera is that you're able to use a certain feature that allows you to kind of let the camera focus on you. So if it detects a person, it'll kind of zoom in and focus on you, and as you move around or back off or back in, it'll either zoom in or zoom out depending on what you're doing. Now it is capped at 1080p. It's a pretty cool feature, but not a feature that I use at all. So this is the video quality coming from the Tab S9. This is kind of like if you were to vlog with it, I guess. It is 4K at 30 frames per second, but kind of uncomfortable to try to hold it with one hand when I'm holding it with two hands. So. But it is a pretty wide one. It's like an ultra wide in a way. So you can see you can get a lot in here if you're just recording yourself here. Ooh, I don't know how it's doing in post, but it seems to be overexposing a bit here where the sun's at. But then again, this is a tablet front camera, which would probably be used mostly indoors for the likes of just video calls potentially. So maybe kind of pushing it to its limits in a way, or putting it in an environment that you likely wouldn't be using it for. But and also, this is the audio coming from the Tab S9, so let me know what you think. I do have AirPods in, but they're not connected to this device, so it's not the audio from the AirPods, just in case you were questioning that. Here we have some 4K footage on the back camera. This is again 4K 30, similar to the front camera, but that's all you got. You can zoom in, but it's all going to be digital. So no extra telephoto, no extra ultra wide, so you can't do an ultra wide shot. Previously on the Tab S8, it did have an ultra wide, but it was a pretty low end ultra wide, so it wasn't even capable of doing 4K. It's only able to do 1080p. But this is what you're getting out of the 4K camera from the Tab S9. Yeah, this should be good for just like maybe, I don't know, if you're at a job or something, you need to record a quick vid of something, whether it be to send it to corporate or, I don't know, for actual usage for work. But definitely don't see this being used for, I don't know, like actual recordings of memories and whatnot. But maybe you have an older aunt or an uncle who might do this. But even if they did, they probably should be more than satisfied with the quality that they're getting out of the camera lens here as far as video. As far as battery life, of course, everyone's usage will be subjective and personal to what kind of apps you run and how long you use your tablet for. But in my experience, it's been overall pretty good. You do have an 8400 milliamp hour battery. So for me, it gets a minimum of 12 to 16 hours total usage, up to a day and a half to 2 days of total usage. So it definitely depends on what I'm doing that day, what I'm using on my tablet. So it may vary for everyone, like I said, but for me, it seems like a big gap, a big fluctuating gap, but on average, it's usually at least a day of full usage. And I'm getting anywhere from 5 hours of minimum screen on time to about 8 or so of screen on time. Granted, most of it is just video content, watching content on streaming services, but it's still able to last me a long time without having to worry about the battery life. So everyone's usage, like I said, will be different, and me personally, I've had a pretty good overall experience. As far as charging speeds, you are able to charge at 45 watts with USB-C, so it takes roughly about an hour and 15 or 20 minutes to fully charge the device from around 0 to 5% up to 100%. So at the end of the day, if you want to know, is the Tab S9 a good tablet? Should you go out and buy it? 100% yes. I think the Tab S9 is a fantastic tablet, well worth the money, and if you get it at a good sale, even better. I think the price of $79 is fairly steep, is definitely expensive, so I would personally get it at a sale, but if money is no issue for you and you just want to know is it a good tablet, yeah, it's a fantastic tablet and you'll be more than satisfied for it. Now, definitely keep in mind, of course, your own usage, your own experience of what you plan on doing with this tablet, and also what you're coming from beforehand. If you've never had a tablet before, just know the display size is the biggest thing you have to consider when choosing a tablet from the Tab S9, Tab S9 Plus, and Tab S9 Ultra. If you're someone who's going to be doing a lot of traveling, a lot of handheld usage, the Tab S9 is definitely your go-to in my opinion. But if you're someone who's going to be using it propped up a lot with controllers, with keyboards, with mice or mouse, connecting external accessories to it, then the Tab S9 Plus will be your minimum in my opinion. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this was helpful, and peace.